Hello.
Welcome to, I think, the 66th episode of Quarkus Insights. So today we have a new cast. So it's me, Dimitris, who are here usually, but haven't been here for a couple of sessions. And today we have with us Bertrand, who is French, as a lot of the Quarkus users seem to be French. And
Belgium.
Excuse me?
Belgium.
Belgian. Oh, sorry.
Speaking
My
French.
mistake. I know. Oh, man. Sorry. Got off on the wrong foot. I thought because you were working for the SNCF that was all French, but
Yes.
I guess I was wrong. So I guess I need to be schooled. So let's hand it over to you so you can tell us all about what we're going to see today.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Bertrand, and I live in Belgium, and I work for SNCF, French National Railway Company, as a
So
consulting
I was
engineer.
half right. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. So I work for SNCF, National Railways French Company, as a consulting engineer. I'm a Java developer since Java 1.5 and J2EE 1.4. I have experience with framework like Spring. I do also web method software AG. I also have experience with OSGI bundle Karaf. I have experience with XSLT mapping. I have experience with recently Quarkus microservice architecture, and this is what I want to talk about with you today.
Excellent. So how does your Quarkus journey start? Like, what was your starting point?
Yes, I started 2 years ago approximately with Quarkus 1.4, I think, or 1.5. I don't remember, no matter. We try to find a lightweight way to have a business feature. We have a big Wildfly application server where we have deployed different .war file, and we try to find something else because we want to have the ability to provide new business feature as quickly as possible. So we are switching to a microservice architecture. We don't have we are not deployed on a cloud infrastructure, so we do everything on premise. We don't have a lot of RAM, so we try to find something really light, and we have heard that there is a new framework where application can start in 1 and 2 milliseconds with only some megabyte of RAM. So it's what we are looking for. So we definitely try to do a test, and we start to do a proof of concept of a NAT decoding. A NAT is a kind of series of train that we process. We process some different like NAT, TTNG, TGV, AGC, Regio 2N, etc. And this is why my trend data is the middleware where I work. Why my trend data is complex is because we are processing all these kind of different series with each series have their own specificities. So this is why it's a little difficult. But we firstly we do a proof of concept of a NAT decoding with a AWS Lambda function. And we did it in the JVM mode and also with the native mode and GraalVM, and also with Python. And we compare the result of the time consumed by the AWS Lambda function.
I have a question. What was the reason to compare with Python, right?
Because some other developer at SNCF use Python, and they just wanted to see if Java is better than Python or if Python is better than Java, because some developers prefer to Python language, but other one prefer to do Java. And
Mhm.
we have a lot of Java code, and some people ask us the question if it's a good idea to switch to Python language. Definitely not, because we have our reason. But the
Right.
main reason is Java is more powerful and cheaper than Python on AWS Lambda.
Did you compare also with Go? I think you have some numbers somewhere, right?
With Go, no, we didn't, but maybe we should. But no, we also wanted to test Node.js, but we didn't do. We only did Java, GraalVM, and Python.
When you
Okay.
say GraalVM, you mean in JVM mode or in compiled native?
Compile native and JVM mode. We did both of them. JVM mode was for us the best. We had the best results with JVM mode. But for
Just to take it a step back, so you wanted to move to like a sort of like microservices type architecture, right? If I
yes,
understand
yes,
correctly, and then you were faced with the decision, okay, like what technology am I going to use to
yes,
build these
that's it.
microservices? So
Exactly.
you built a proof of concept in this
That's
various technologies and compared, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's it.
Excellent.
And the proof of concept was related to a decoding NAT event. Typically, it's a binary file that we have to decode to a text file with a AWS Lambda function. So
Can you also specify? So your typical use case is that those trains produce
yes,
telemetry data, and those
yes,
are communicated to some server, and then you do all the number crunching to see, what's going on, alarms and stuff like that. Yeah.
yes, that's it. Yes, the finality of my trend data is to produce alert. I can show you a simplified diagram. So we have a different series of train. They emit
The whole alphabet soup: TGV, ATV, and
yes. They emit some signals to a first layer, and then this front train layer sends a message with different protocol, mainly GMS and web service notification to my trend data. So we receive all of them, and we decode them. So we receive mainly a binary file, XML, and a text file, and we decode them to a pivot format, and then we inject them in a dedicated data sources. We have a Angular single page application to consult all the event, and we have a rule engine that process what the data, and then may produce some alerts, meaning that a train need maintenance. I cannot say more about the rule engine because this is the confidential part of this session, but this is the heart of my trend data. So for the proof of concept, the Lambda, I can show you the pro and cons of using native versus JVM mode.
maybe you
JVM,
can make it a bit bigger.
yes, of course, of course. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, good.
Great.
Yes. For native GraalVM mode, the only pros I found is fast cold start. If cold start is really, really important for you, it's a good idea to do GraalVM native mode. But the problem, it's difficult to build, really difficult, and it take a long time. Approximately half an hour for a build. I did with this kind of computer, and I did many build, waiting almost 130 hours only for the build time. Computer restart is required each 2 builds. SSL is not natively supported, donc I spend time to find how to do. Reflection config hard to find, reflex.json, proxy config.json hard to find, resource config.json, and application.properties super hard to find. I can show you a bit configuration. This is
Bertrand, sorry. Those native builds were made through Quarkus, or
yes,
on
with
your
Quarkus.
own?
Yes, with Quarkus, but
you were using extra libraries, if I understand correctly, right?
yes, we did it with Quarkus, but I spent a lot of time on the GraalVM site to find the good configuration. So yes, here is the pom.xml of the project. So as you can see, we have the profile native provided by Quarkus. But we add some extra dependencies because we need to get an object from a S3, and we need to process it. So we have the handler. This is the entry point of the function. We receive a S3 event notification, an S3 event, because the lambda has to be triggered when a S3 object will be dropped on the S3. So we receive the S3 event notification. We must get the S3 object, and this is where things can be not complicated, but we have some different choice. We can use Apache, Netty, or URL connection. We choose URL connection with these dependencies. Yes, this one. This one is to me is the fastest way to get an object from somewhere else. And this is what we used. So in the handler, we have here the get S3 event. We use this code to get the object.
Mm-hmm.
And the S3 client that we send here. Here. I just want to show how we made the S3 client. Yes, with that. Okay. This is how we build the S3 client with the URL connection HTTP client. This is the best way to make requests to S3. So this is the same with a JVM mode or a native mode, but what I want to show you is the particularity of the native mode and why it's complex. It's complex because this kind of file, as you can see here, for example, this is all the properties to send to the GraalVM, and really it was hard to find all of them, but everything is necessary. But it's like that. Also, for example, the reflect.json file was quite difficult to find.
Mm-hmm. So there's no extension for this.
No, I think not. We have to find by yourself the good configuration. The SSL mode is not natively supported, so I must generate it. The proxy config.json also, and you see Quarkus index dependencies. I needed to add Jodatime and AWS Java JDK S3. So for all this reason, on my opinion, I would not recommend you to use GraalVM for AWS Lambda if cold start is not important for you. When the Lambda is hot, JVM mode is faster than GraalVM. So this is the project.
Well, now that you have all the data around it, maybe you could contribute a couple of extensions that automate.
Oh yes, it will be super nice to do. Yes.
Well, we do have one at Amazon S3, but I'll admit that I haven't looked at it. I'm not exactly sure what it does. But yeah, if some of the stuff that you've done here,
yes,
we could do in the extension, that would be excellent for.
Yes, I can contribute. So that's all for the Lambda. The first thing to do with GraalVM Lambda is to add this environment variable, disable signal handlers to true. It's in the Quarkus documentation, but I didn't see it from the start, so I spent a little bit time to find it, but it's in the Quarkus documentation. So we did this proof of concept. We will happy to make it. We have a really good result, especially with JVM mode. And we definitely choose Quarkus as the right framework to continue and to start to migrate our Wildfly application server to a microservice architecture. So we have approximately 50 microservices in production. We have all build and deployment pipeline made with Jenkins. We are not on a cloud, so we deploy everything on premise. We don't have orchestrator like Kubernetes, so we have to see always the state of our microservice, and if something wrong happen, we have to go in SSH mode to the server and do manually a Docker restart on our server. So it's not the best way to do, but it works. I can show you maybe I don't know, a typical microservice that we have. We have a lot.
So where do all these microservices fit in the diagram that you showed us earlier?
Yes, with this one?
Yeah, in this diagram, like the various microservices that you're talking about, like the one you'll show us, where does it fit in?
So everything is in a MyTrend data box. Here we are the Wildfly application server, and we also have the Quarkus microservices. We are still migrating, so we succeed to remove one .war file, and it's migrated on Quarkus, and it's in production.
Okay, cool.
Yes, that's it works really good. We like Quarkus because it allows us to quickly answer to new requirements. So when clients come with a new business functionality, we can develop it very fast and make it in a production very fast. So it's good. For example, we have this microservice. Yes, we have 2 ways to deploy a microservice. It's important to precise because as I say, the complexity is we have some different series of train, and we have one dedicated data source for each series, and we have some generic service. We have some microservice that should work with each of series. So we have 2 choices. We can do the microservice and do it in a mono data source. And if we do with mono data source, we have to run a Docker instance for each series. Or we can do with multi-data source. So in one microservice, we have all the data source, and we have only one running Docker instance.
And how many data sources you are
14. 14.
Okay.
14.
1,
yes.
4. Okay.
Yes.
So 14 data sources. I guess like this is like different domains, or how come there are so many?
Only different kind of series, kind of train. We have a data source for TGV, one for TTNG, one for NAT. For all these series that we process, we have a dedicated data source.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes, so I can show you the two ways that we do. For example, for this microservice, we must deploy it for this series. So we didn't want to have a data source, all these data source in the same microservice. So in this service, we inject only one PG pool. We all our data source are PostgreSQL, so we use the reactive Postgre driver, and this is why we have everything in a reactive, because we
Okay,
only
so from the looks of it, this looks like you're using everything reactive. So you're using a reactive database driver, but you're also
yes,
using small array reactive messaging to
yes, yes,
process.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. Because why reactive? I like. Reactive with Quarkus because it comes implicitly to the developer. The developer don't have to go, don't have to look for the how to make it with reactive way. Reactive way is coming to the developer. For example, if I want to receive message with Kafka, for example, I use the incoming annotation and I'm in the reactive way. So it's really good. So I have only one PG pool and I have all these Docker Compose file and I make a deployment for each of them. Or we can do other way and have only one, since it's another microservice, one Docker Compose file, but all the data source should be defined inside it, and I don't like it. I prefer to split, but if we embed all the data source, we only have one running Docker instance, and for RAM, it's better because we don't have a lot. So we have to do something in a mono data source and something in multi data source way. Is it okay?
Yeah, looks good. So,
for example, here is we have a lot of SQL function call.
So you mean stored procedures on the
Yes,
database, right?
yes. On database layer, we have a lot of business logic and a lot of stored procedure. So we call them. For example, we have some scheduler microservice. When we have to call a procedure each 1 minute. So this is how we do. I can maybe, and this is where the funny part starts. We have one microservice scheduler, and we do some call to a SQL function, and this SQL function has a different parameter. One of the parameter is the series. So we call it by passing the series and the equipment. It's another parameter. This is how we do with the multi. Typically, we
So this is attempting to do what, to create some kind of alert?
Sorry?
Is this attempting to create some kind of alert? Like, what's the business case for this method?
Yes, for this one is just to pass information to another microservice. This business case of this microservice is to pass alerts to another microservice. And
okay, so it's reading something from Kafka, like doing some processing, and then passing alerts back to Kafka. Okay.
Yes, that's it. We got the alerts from database and we send them in the outgoing to the outgoing channel, and we have another microservice here with the incoming alert, and then we send to the injector. This is, for example, my first reactive microservice. So we use the diagnostic data transmission as the pivot format. Diagnostic data transmission is the UIC 559. defined format for diagnostic data transmission from railway vehicles.
So this is some kind of standard
Yes,
format.
this
for
is a standard
exchanging.
format for railways vehicle, and we map it in Java. So all the microservice use this pivot format to work. And for example, this microservice is how to transform an alert to a diagnostic data transmission, and we do some database call and get the uni. And then what I like with reactive programming is the business starts after on the return statements. When I have the return statements, then I start to do my business logic and playing with the uni and the different method. On item invoke, on item if not null, transform to uni, etc., etc. And I use a lot the uni combine because it's, I think, the way to do. And
So
I
looking
can
at this, like I've never seen this code, but looking at this, it seems like it reads a lot better than like other reactive code I've seen in the past, right?
Yes.
I mean, the methods really seem to tell you like exactly what's going on here.
And have you experienced with other reactive frameworks to compare with?
Not I try to do a reactor, but never succeed to have what I was trying to do. It was more difficult than Mutiny. I like Mutiny because it, for the first time, I think that reactive programming is easier to do. I think thanks to the page. Sorry, here it's. I like. I spend many times reading it, but there are not a lot of documentation. It's really straightforward, and this is what why I like. For example, here the guide. There are not a lot, and after reading it 1, 2, or 3 times, it will be not easy, but easier to do
Easier,
reactive.
exactly. Yeah, it's definitely not easy. That's
Yes, reactive programming. It's just need practices. After practice, it's now it's natural for me to code like that, and I will do it probably for a long time. I hope so. And yes, this is why
And you haven't tried the Hibernate Reactive yet, right?
Not Hibernate Reactive. We have a microservice with Panache, but not Hibernate Reactive. We don't have to manage an Hibernate session. We don't have to do some flush or something like that. And we prefer to have the SQL statement native in the code instead of have an Hibernate session. So if I go to yeah, like this, we have some yes, like that. I prefer to have the code, the SQL statement like that.
So yeah, you prefer to have control over.
Yes, because
valid. A lot of people say that.
Yes. But the problem is that we have more and more microservices, and we don't have, as I said, a way to control them and to see the state of them. So we need to develop a solution to know if all the microservices are in a good state or not.
That's why you have a Kubernetes and stuff like that, yeah.
Yes, we would. I want to have Kubernetes, but as I said, we are not on cloud. We are on premise, and SNCF doesn't provide Kubernetes service for their on-premise server. So we can use just a plain Docker. But all the microservice expose an health check. Donc, in the microservice, always we have Quarkus Malray health. We have it. I noticed that we also have a Quarkus logging gel to send our log to a Kibana stack, Logstash Elasticsearch Kibana stack. We have a reactive messaging, reactive PG client. We use Quarkus Jackson, a bit of JUnit, something like that. We have we always override the default L-check because we want to add some information like the host name where the microservice is deployed, like the port, the HTTP port. We also want to provide the application version and the Quarkus version, and so we can do get REST request to the L-check endpoint, but we prefer to have a single page application to show all these status. So we have developed a L-check solution where we can see the status of our microservice. As you can see, some are up, some are down. Here it's down because everything is ready, but it has not been deployed yet. We have, for example, here the first one, and
So
when
this is interesting. How although you're not using Kubernetes, you are leveraging
yes,
health check for
yes,
That's really neat. Yeah,
hard
no,
work.
that's
It
cool.
was really hard work, but it was very important because we have some need to restart a lot of time our microservice, and we have to see approximately to real time the status of the L check. So this is why it was necessary to develop this application. I noticed that I use a basic auth with the Elytron JDBC Quarkus extension with salt password in database, and it works really well. So thanks for this extension too. And in the L-check, typically what you see here is just the JSON response. Is the kind to see what the information you have in the JSON response. For example, the Kafka connection L-check, we see that on the 1, 2, and 3 server, the status is up. We have the reactive Postgre connection on the server and the reactive messaging also. So this is how we administrate our microservice. I did this application with React. I can show you quickly how I did, but even if it's not the purpose of this talk. Yes, I use React with React hooks and React context, no Redux. We use a web component, and I try to split as possible the component and to have some, for example, the Kafka L-check to have always really a compact web component that can be reusable later.
So this is a Node.js application, or just a Quarkus application with a front end?
Yes. The front-end application is made with React, so it's not application, and we have a back end for the front end. This is a Quarkus API.
Okay.
For example, we have I don't know if it will work. Yes, sorry, I'm not on VPN, so I cannot show you the screen. Yes, no, it's down. Sorry, but this is because
all the trains are broken.
Yes, all the trains are broken.
They're on strike.
We also have with that screen the ability to control some business feature. For example, here typically we have a switch that we can go to on or off, and it's linked to a Boolean flag in database. So in here we can control. Yes, with that. Is active is a Boolean value. Is coming from a database, and if it's active, we will do the SQL request. If it's not active, we will return an empty. And to control this flag, we have a dedicated screen here where we can switch on or off. It's controlled by a server sent event, as you can see here. Donc, we have a web service, and we can we receive the Boolean value from the React application, and we have an object that lives in a Hibernate session. This is a Panache entity, and we set active true or false. We publish it with the event bus, and then we have another web service with server sent event that consume this live coding channel, and we return a multi of JSON object, and this is how we have the value. For example, if two users use the same screen and one switch the value from on to off, the other user will see the switch value switching. He must not refresh the page to see the updating value. So this is for.
I have a question actually. Do you have any idea what the kind of amount of traffic is that you're handling with all these microservices?
Yes, we have some traffic. We can control it with Kibana. In Kibana, we have a dedicated index for microservice, and we can just do a count. I don't have the number to give you right now, but this is kind of information that I can retrieve with Kibana. But we have some. Yes, we start to have some traffic. Some series, most of the series are still on the Wildfly application server. We are migrating it. Some series are really a lot of activities. So it will be more and more.
Some trains are more popular than others, I assume.
Yes. For example, TGV is the most popular. And when will we migrate it to Quarkus, we will have really more activities. But for now, we develop some kind of microservice, some transversal microservice. We also have some framework layer. We start to have a framework microservice for GMS connection, for web service notification connection, for mailing, and for Kibana logs. We have two ways to send the Kibana logs. The first one is by using the Jelf plugin. So the log.info statement will automatically send to Logstash, and we have other kind of log that will send with Kafka. And we have a dedicated framework for that.
Bertrand, so obviously you're not alone in the team, and now you're familiar with the framework, but for other developers that join the team, how easy is to get the hang of Quarkus and write a microservice?
The first step to do is do reactive programming. Once reactive programming is okay, everything is okay. We have some new developers who's coming in the team, and we try to ask them to do a simple microservice, and because we already did a lot, they can just take what they want in the what we already done. I recommend them to read the Quarkus guide. It's really straightforward, and
So are we talking about a week, a month? How long normally?
1 month maybe, to be comfortable with reactive programming. But if a new programmer is coming, if he has experience with Spring, for example, or maybe just plain Java, it's okay to start from day one, because we have some kind of it's using Quarkus is comfortable for a Java developer because
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Basically, like most of your programmers, I assume, like
yes,
already have Java Enterprise knowledge or Spring knowledge. So I assume
yes,
that it's
the
easy
same.
for
It's
them
the
to.
same. Yes,
Yeah.
the only difference is you don't use AutoWire, you use inject. That's all. That's all.
That's
So
important. Yeah.
and yes, I have to mention that we use Lombok a lot, especially with the build pattern. For example, this is my best, my more elaborated reactive service, microservice, and like always, the return type is a diagnostic data transmission. It's a UNI. We got a message from a Kafka topic. We send the message to another Kafka topic. This is a generic injector. And what we do is to build a diagnostic data transmission. The finality of the microservice is to build the diagnostic data transmission. So we start. And how we start, we have a string message and we do some processing. First, we convert, because it's XML message, first we convert it to object with JAXB. And then we archive the file. We use Vertex file system. For example, we use Vertex a lot, for example, to archive a file. And like I said, once the return statement we start to do, and then we will chain and combine layer after layer and building a diagnostic data transmission at the end. This is the return. Sorry, I can do like this to show you more. This is the return will be a UNI of diagnostic data transmission. And how we got it, we go from layer to layer, and we have in a diagnostic data transmission, we have a list of events. So first we, yes, we got the list of UNI diagnostic event. It's unsorted. And when we have this list, we will combine then to sort, and we, for example, how we sort, we compare by using a comparator comparing a tree comparison. And then we use the map a lot to combine and to build. Yes, that's what I was looking for. To build the diagnostic data transmission. Once we reach this part of the code, everything is okay to return the diagnostic data transmission. But we got to a lot of steps. For example, to build here, we also pass all the information to build the diagnostic event. And as I said, we use the builder a lot, and we just have to do this is a Lombok feature, the builder, and set all the value. We try to be to set all the instance variable as a final. We never reaffect object. We use reactive functional programming. We never mutate state. If we prefer to pass value as a function parameter instead of have an instance variable that we will mutate. So we do like that. It's quite not easy to explain quickly what's in this service, but typically this service just do the transformation of one file, UIC file. This kind of XML file is the file sent by the train to a diagnostic data transmission object. This is what the microservice is doing. And then we send the result to a Kafka topic, and it will be processed by our framework microservice to inject finally in our database. And then the engine rule will do its work to potentially emit alerts to make a train maintenance.
Excellent. So that's that's probably like the heaviest usage of Mutiny I've seen around. That's awesome to see. And
Yes.
definitely, we have a question actually. I just want to encourage users, viewers to ask more questions if they want. We have a question here that says, "Good stuff." Question: As complexity increases, there may be more and more chaining. So yeah, well, we saw a lot of that. Curious if there's a pattern to scale and keep the code more maintainable.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we'll be chain more and more up to 6, 7, maybe 8 layer of chaining. I don't know how to do in other way. I think that how Mutiny, I think that we do in the good way with Mutiny. I don't know if it's another way to do. But yes, as soon as we got a list, some uni or some multi, and we want to get the value inside this uni or multi, we have to combine, because when we combine all these uni, we have a callback when we got the data, the information, and then with that information, if we had to make other SQL calls, database call, for example, we will got a new uni, and then we will potentially combine them again and again, and this is why we have some layer, and this is how we do.
So Clement actually offered a suggestion here. He's saying that with Mutiny, you can have a plug method that allows you to split the pipeline into multiple stages. And I'm also talking with Julien, who's also working on Mutiny. He's watching the stream as well. Is saying that it would also be it's also good practice to break up some of these parts that are let's say independent, to break them into individual methods, and like so you can have a better name and like perhaps more comments on,
Okay.
on the method
Yes,
itself.
interesting.
So I'm definitely sure that Clement and Julien will want to talk to you because of your awesome Mutiny usage here, and I'm sure they have a lot of tips for you to be able to.
Thank you.
How
about testing? Because all these reactive codes, do you have any advice to offer for testing it?
For testing, what we do, we start the microservice as normal, and we send manually message to Kafka broker started on my local host, and we see the result. We use Kafdrop to inspect what's inside, what transit inside the Kafka topic, but we don't really have a JUnit layer for reactive code. We simulate normal activities on a local host, and we go to a Kafdrop to see what inside the topic or the other component that we use. But for example, here yes, we don't have, as you can see, it's quite difficult to use the switch incoming channel to in memory. I had some problem to make it work.
Well, I'm sure that again, like Julien and Clement will probably definitely have pointers, but also feedback. Like a thing we say a lot here on this show is that we don't want to hear only the good stuff. We also want to hear like what the troubles people have, because we definitely want to take that feedback and improve throughout the framework, right? So if testing is more difficult, then I'm sure that we can find ways to make it easier, right?
What we can do if we want to test, we have a public method on message. We can do another public method with the same signature, but without the incoming, outgoing acknowledge annotation, and call the method from a JUnit environment.
Cool.
It's possible to do like that. But when we test, I just start the microservice on my local host, and I have, for example, here we always use environment variable in application properties, and we have a substitution variable if the environment variable is not defined. And this is how we do when I start the microservice. My trend data Kafka broker environment variable is not defined because I don't start with Docker on a local host, so it switched to local host, and this is the address of my Kafka broker on my laptop. We use can mention that we use.
Clement is also mentioning that on the roadmap,
yes.
he and Ozan are planning to make Kafka testing easier
Yes.
for Quarkus, and also and we also have the dev services for Kafka too as well, right? So that would start a Kafka broker for you for your Quarkus application if you haven't configured anything else. So those would definitely help out.
I can show you one more thing.
Cool.
How we define the environment variable by environment. We use Ansible for that. We have an inventories with some variable depending on the environment, and we use them in the Docker Compose file with this syntax, and then we can reuse the environment variable from the Docker Compose file in the application.properties. This is how we do.
Okay, right. So I see. Yeah, you're using what we have in small right config, where it allows you to set a default, but also override it with an environment variable.
Yes. We don't use a console to centralize the configuration. Unfortunately, it will be a good idea to use because we repeat a lot of, for example, data source configuration in all of microservice, and sometimes there is a typos and something goes wrong because there is an error in the username, for example. So it will be a good idea to centralize all our configuration, but for now we don't have this possibility.
Yeah, and if you move to Kubernetes, you could also use things like config map or
okay.
or stuff like that.
Okay, interesting. I never use Kubernetes. A bit, but not a lot.
Okay. Bertrand, were there any things in particular you've missed from Quarkus that you'd like to flag? No is a good answer as well.
Hard question. Really, I don't know. For now, I have everything that I want. It's easy. What I like to Quarkus, it's really easy. This is the message that I say to incoming developer in our team that Quarkus it's an easy way to do enterprise application. This is why I like it.
And just to clarify, this production code essentially has been there for how long now? It's a year or no? The first Quarkus microservices were made when?
1 year maybe. Yes, 1 year approximately. Maybe more 1 year, and we're still deploying it. We can have, I think, maybe 200 microservice when we'll kill Wildfly totally. Maybe more 150, but approximately 150 microservice totally.
I'm very attached to Wildfly, so please don't kill it. Just leave it there running with some stuff.
Wildfly works good, but the problem with Wildfly is we have to deploy everything in one pipeline. We don't have deploy separation.
Well, the latest Wildfly allows you to do even fat jars and stuff like that. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. We have another 5 minutes, George, right?
Yeah, another 5 minutes. So if you have something final you want to show us, or
we use a Camel, for example. Camel context works well with Quarkus. For example, here we are nidempotent root, extend the root builder.
What we do is the Camel extension here, right?
Yes, we use Camel extension. Why we use Camel extension instead of SmallRye GMS? small I GMS. It's all because it's a camel route. We use from GMS to Kafka, and there is also a GMS connector. Because from the start I wanted to use the incoming outgoing annotation from GMS to Kafka, and I didn't use the GMS connector because the GMS connector has not the the shared true functionality to load balance subscription. This is a GMS2 feature, shared equals true. This is a GMS2 feature, and it's not yet implemented by the GMS connector. And this is why I use Camel.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. This how you found this alternative. That's cool.
Yeah. We also use the Kafka idempotent repository to make sure not to process the same message 2 times, and it's easy, super easy to add it to a camel route like dot idempotent consumer like this. So a dedicated Kafka topic idempotent TTNG will care of not to process duplicate message. So Camel is really good. I like to use it. Even a long time ago, I use Camel a lot. And with Quarkus, it's super easy to implement. We also have some other Camel route with Azure Blob Storage. It works in the same way. Super easy.
Nice. Nice. So you're using a lot of integrations here. I see, like, there's a lot of extensions.
Yes, a lot of integration. Mainly, my trend data is not doing. We have decoder mainly, but what we do it's playing with data and take data from one place and move it to another place. This is mainly what we do, and do some transformation on it. But this is mostly what we do.
Excellent. All right.
Very nice.
So next time if anyone gets on a French train, they should know that in the background there's some Quarkus somewhere crunching data, so they can go there safe or something.
Yes.
So it's a great example of a mission-critical application. So
absolutely, yeah. We're seeing more and more of this, right? Like Quarkus moving into these very, very important industries, and having allowing teams to scale and deliver features a lot faster than they used to.
Yes,
it's great.
So I guess with that we can finish for today. Yes.
Yeah. I think unless Bertrand has anything last he wants to add.
Yes. Thank you very much for the session, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks to the Quarkus team.
Thank you for all your help, and thanks for everybody who's watching. And I'm not sure we have a show next week. Just keep an eye out on Twitter, because I don't remember if we have something scheduled for next week. But I do know there's something scheduled for the 18th. I'm just not sure about next week. But keep an eye out on Twitter, and you'll find it out first. In any case, so
cool.
Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.